In June 2004, the tensions towards my people escalated quickly. The Congolese kids at school were calling me Rondon all the time, dubbing me a foreigner, repeating what they had heard at home. "You're Rondon," they would yell. I would give them my standard reply: "I am not. I've never been there." Some teachers were even warning us during class, implying that trouble was coming. My parents heard rumors at work. My father tried hard to shelter us, but he couldn't control what we heard at school or on the street. All signs pointed to another interrupted year. I was busy getting ready for school one morning when Dad left and returned home in a yellow minivan with a stranger at the wheel. Dad came hurrying into the house, a worried look on his face. He was wearing black dress pants and a black shirt, and looked as if he might be going somewhere special, perhaps for work. Then again, he was always dressed up, so I wasn't sure if anything was wrong or not. I had finished getting dressed for school and was preparing to head out with Alex. Chris and Adele had already left for their school, which was a few miles away. Princess was at home with us. She was a senior that year and had been preparing for the national exam to earn her diploma. My dad told us to wait and not go anywhere. He went into a bedroom with my mom, and they talked in hushed whispers. Then they walked out together. "Sandra, you need to pack," Dad said. "We will be leaving home again." I went to my room and took off my school uniform so I wouldn't soil it on our trip. Then I pulled out a big copper-colored suitcase with buckles that locked on top. The first thing I packed was my pale blue dress from the dance procession. It was the most useless thing to take to a refugee camp, of course. And I knew I probably wouldn't wear it. But still, I wanted it with me. In fact, I wanted all of my fanciest clothes with me. So I packed my church clothes. I was 10 years old, and it was the first time I was really old enough to pack for myself. I was quite proud of my packing decisions. I helped Deborah pack too, and she also wanted her prettiest, most impractical outfits. My parents had no time to supervise our efforts. They said we needed to leave immediately. My dad asked our neighbors, who were not members of our tribe and did not need to flee, to get an urgent message to Chris and Adele to leave school and head for the mountains to stay with our grandparents. We all figured it was just another temporary exodus. We had to leave my pet monkey, Kiki, behind, but I assumed I would be back soon. Thus we began the journey that is forever seared in my mind. We crammed into the yellow van. I sat by the window in the second row with Deborah, Princess, and Heritage next to me. Heritage had recently returned home from Burundi, looking much healthier. Mom sat with two neighbors in the back. Dad sat up front with the driver. Weaving through the streets of Uvira, we watched people frantically trying to get out of the city. Desperate people knocked on our vehicle when we slowed down, begging to get inside. "I'm sorry, there's no space," my father called to them. I sat there, dazed, thinking we might be away from home longer than usual this time. We drove about 45 minutes, with Dad discussing different routes with Mom and the driver. Then suddenly, we were stopped at a checkpoint, or rather an ambush. A blockade of chairs, benches, and tables lay across the road, and men stood there with guns, forcing us to stop. On the side of the road, a mob of angry Congolese people stood, men, women, and children. They wore mostly civilian clothes, although some had military-styled pants. They carried machetes, knives, and rifles. The crowd rushed toward us and began shaking the minivan. We braced ourselves. It felt as if the van might tip over. We had mattresses and suitcases tied to the top of the vehicle, and the attackers tore them down and stole them. We hurried to lock the doors and tried to close the windows. but the windows were stuck open. The vehicle was rusty and old, ready to fall apart. People reached in, grabbing at us. They ripped our watches off our wrists. I had always known that many Congolese people disliked us, but I had never seen such hate on people's faces. Even little kids were shaking the van angrily. Why are these kids so furious? I thought. They don't even know us. I didn't understand what was happening. I thought children were supposed to respect their elders, but they were throwing rocks and sand at all of us, my parents included. We tried to dodge the rocks flying at our heads. Some of the kids had guns. People were spitting at us. Deborah and I were crying, and my parents looked defenseless. Then the driver got out of the van, took the keys, and walked away, leaving us there to be attacked. He was Congolese, and I think he drove us there on purpose. I wondered how we could ever escape. Princess put her arms around Deborah and me, holding us close. Amid the chaos, a grown man, he appeared to be in his 40s, marched up to the van, looking like he wanted to kill us. He reached in through the window and punched Deborah in the face. Completely shocked and in pain, she began wailing. I couldn't fathom it. Why would a man punch a 6-year-old child in the face? I cried hysterically too, and Princess tried to calm us down. I wondered what Deborah was thinking. She was probably wondering, why aren't my mom and dad protecting me? My parents were helpless. They were trying to calm Heritage, who was having a breakdown. No doubt the result of post-traumatic stress from his time as a child soldier. He wanted to get out of the van and fight with people. My parents were trying to keep him inside. Then one of our neighbors in the back of the van started shouting, "I'm not a soldier! I'm not a soldier!" I wondered why he was saying that. Perhaps he feared that we were under attack because the Congolese thought we were some kind of rebels. Although we certainly didn't look the part. We were completely exposed, with no way out. We must have sat there for almost an hour, waiting to die. We couldn't jump out into the mob, but we couldn't move the car without the keys. It was the longest hour of my life. We so easily could have all been killed right there. But then, a miracle. An angel appeared. A young Congolese man wearing a striped polo shirt and sporting a cool haircut pushed his way through the crowd to the van. He looked like Will Smith when he starred in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. "Why are you still here?" he asked us. "Our driver left with the keys," Dad said. "We can't move." "You need to get out of here," the man said, "or you are going to die." The man asked what our driver looked like, and my dad described him. Then the man left and remarkably returned 10 minutes later, forcing his way through the mob again. He had the keys. He managed to wedge himself into the car. People didn't try to fight him since he was Congolese. "I'm going to drive out of here as fast as possible," he said. "We'll see what happens." This good-hearted stranger saved our lives. I will never forget him. There was nothing in it for him to help us. In fact, he could have been killed for doing so. But he sped toward the blockade of furniture, finding a weak spot on one side where there were just a few chairs piled on top of one another. He smashed through the chairs, crunching them beneath the wheels, and got us out of there. People were going crazy, running after the van. We were all crying and screaming. I heard gunfire and kept my head down. This mysterious man drove us to the Congolese border, which was jammed with crowds of people trying to get out of the country and head into Burundi. We piled out of the van. None of us had really processed the attack. We were too shaken up. Our suitcases inside the van had not been stolen, and we yanked them out. Dad thanked our driver, this mystical being. The young man drove off, and I hope and pray that he survived after saving our lives. I will never know. At the border, we climbed into a giant semi-truck run by the refugee arm of the United Nations, the UNHCR. The truck was built to carry cargo, not people, and it was smelly and disgusting, packed full of bodies. It reeked like rotten food. We were jammed in there so tightly, we could barely move. Everyone was hot and sweaty, the kind of sweat that smells like fear. The back door of the truck was left open so we could breathe, but people had to hang on for their lives and be careful not to tumble out onto the road. We drove for about a half hour into Burundi, and then stopped at an empty field near a town called Gatumba. The sun was starting to set. That empty field was our home for the night.